Welcome to Care to CEO. This is episode 3 of the show that helps caregivers and underdogs become confident business owners in the care industry. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to get licensed and get paid and demystifying the process. A real world walkthrough of how to legally start your business, get approved, and secure Medicaid and state payments. And today, one thing we're tackling is what Crystal seems to get asked the most of how do I even get started legally? What licenses do I need? What's the process? How do I actually get paid? So if you've ever felt overwhelmed or stuck Googling into a void, this episode is your lifeline. Crystal's going to break it down for us. No fluff, just real answers.
Yes, so I'm so thankful to be here for the third episode. It's almost Friday. Thank God it's almost Friday. Ending the week on a good note, and I hope everyone else is having the same great experience. Licensing is definitely one of the most scariest parts of this process, especially the new entrepreneurs. And so I just want to say that when I first looked into licensing, I won't lie, I was definitely overwhelmed. Paperwork, the rules, the state websites, and some of these websites, they look like they haven't been updated since the 90s, and it's definitely a lot. And I remember thinking, how am I going to figure all this out, But what I did do and what pushed me, number one, was definitely my vision. I wasn't doing this just for me. I'm building something that could change lives. So I took it one step at a time, which is definitely what I recommend. I stopped trying to figure it all out in one day because, yes, I can, I am fairly ambitious. So I do tend to think I can do everything at once. And I had to stop that mindset. And I started, reading and researching, and I started learning something new each day, to help me towards my goal. And reaching out to people in the industry, and picking their brains about, what they experience day to day. And this was especially helpful to me. I called the State Department every day, which in my case was the Department of Developmental Disabilities. So I called on a regular basis. I'm telling you, I bugged these people. They were like practically picking up the phone, like, "Hey, Crystal, how you doing?" And I did that because, there were so many things in the rules and sometimes, in the different policies that just you needed clarification. So those actions really saved me, and I recommend that. That's what you do.
I think that some of what you just said might have been some of the reasons that helped you overcome these initial stressors and struggles. But being that licensing is one of the scariest parts for new
Definitely.
entrepreneurs, what were some of your first thoughts when you did decide to get licensed, and how did you kind of push through that overwhelm?
One of the first things that I had to do was decide what business structure I was going to use. I will admit that initially I actually chose the wrong business structure. So I had to fix that error. And, you can do that by, well, for me, it was to go to the Ohio Secretary of State, but, and it was about $99. And get your EIN. That's something that's free on the IRS website. And then I registered with the State Department, which in my case was the Department of Developmental Disabilities, I'm sorry. And that is really where the process and the work to start this can get a little tedious because you have to set up your portal. And I also want to say that it depends on what population you're trying to serve. So since I was going to be working with individuals with developmental disabilities, that's why DODD was the state licensing department I was working with. But if you were looking to serve, say, the aging population, then you would work and register with the Department of Aging. So, but it does vary from state to state. I had to create a portal, and really essentially the application consists of uploading several documents that are a requirement in order to even submit your application. I'm giving an example. It could be your diploma, your ID, business documents, insurance, things of that nature. Also, setting up your policies and procedure manual. That is probably the most time consuming part of the entire process. I did this by literally going into the policies, the state policies and procedures, and constantly calling the compliance department and making sure I was wording things correctly. So that probably took the most work. But, I, for my clients that are using my mentorship program, for my clients who are using my mentorship, I have templates and several different versions of policies for them. So I do try to make that process a lot easier. And you have to definitely set up your profile and get your liability insurance and background checks. And this is this one is something that really holds a lot of people back for my state. And this varies from state to state. You need to save $10,000 in an account that's registered in your business name for 3 consecutive months. That can be challenging for someone who is just starting out. And I know that it was for me as well, but I do know how to help people maneuver through this process, fairly quickly. So I would say all in all, this process took about two months to get licensed. And I would say throughout the licensing process, so we're just talking the licensing process, I think I spent maybe about probably less than $3,000 to start because I was strategic about it. Now I know I've spoke to people who said that they have 500,000. God bless you. I didn't. And I know that in other states such as Arizona, that $10,000, because they have a whole different cost of living and different system, you need 100,000 in order to set up a business such as this. So, I used payment plans to get me started. I leveraged free resources, and I did whatever I could not to overextend myself financially. And eventually we got it done. And so, but now I'm going to help people take that long process that I did and really hopefully shorten and streamline the process so you can get through it much more quickly.
Absolutely. That's definitely sounds like so many things to try to navigate. So you did just tell us a little bit about your own licensing journey and the different costs and different, I guess, companies and like the IRS website and different tools to navigate through that. But if you had to think about like the first, like let's say 3 to 5 steps that you took when you got started, what would you narrow it down to? Would it be looking into the different websites or costs?
It would be deciding who I wanted, had to, find what population I wanted to serve and how I wanted to go about that. Because even with getting licensed through the Department of Developmental Disabilities, I mean, there's so many ways you can go about it. Just even in that niche, you can provide the 24-hour housing like I do, or you can go into people's homes. You know what I mean? So I decided that I wanted to set things up that way where I provide the residential homes and the 24-hour staff. And then, like I would say, I got a network of like-minded people who were already operating, and I started working very closely under them. I communicated with them on a regular basis. I mean, because these are very key, tools that you need to use. Is use the people around you, leverage their skills and their wisdom and experience that they already have, so that they can help you get where you're trying to go. So I definitely did that, and I would say my day consisted of treating the licensing process like a 9 to 5 job. And honestly, I would say 9 to 9. I was like, that's really more like what it felt like. I really spent the bulk of my day doing anything I needed to in order to prepare to open and launch my business. And eventually it paid off because what I'll say is probably the persistency, the focus. I just didn't let nothing else really matter. And mind you, I have children. So I even had to let my children know, like, listen, I'm trying to work on something that is going to change our lives. So I need you guys to just, give me this time to get it done. And they did.
It was good that they all kind of got on board for that.
I know, I know. We had to talk to all of them. Like, I had to give everybody a job. Everybody, listen, you're on like cooking duty, you're on cleaning duty, like, and that's kind of what I did. My husband, it was like, hey, you got to do this. You get kids, get them where they need to go. That's how we did things. We really did operate as a team.
In terms of the licensing, who actually does give you the license, though? Is it the state, the county, Medicaid? And what is the best way to figure that out for where someone lives?
That is a really good question, and it really depends on the type of home, the home care that you want to provide in your state. Typically, it's whatever state department that you're looking to get a license with. So again, I'm going to shorten it to it's DODD is what we call it for what I do. But again, if you were, say, looking to work with the aging population or another population, you would get licensed with the Department of Aging. Medicaid is a payer. So, and that's, something people sometimes get confused. It's not a licensing body. And so you don't necessarily need to get approved or licensed, but you do need to follow the correct procedures in order for you to become a payee of Medicaid because definitely you have to get through their system and get approved in order to get paid, so that is definitely a process. And I would say the best way to figure this out for anyone looking to start their own business is really to go to your state's official health department website or call them. Just don't be afraid to ask. Can you tell me what licenses are required to open a non-medical home care agency? And I'm sure they'll point you in the right direction. They certainly did me. I told you I called them all day long. They really did. And even when I went under review, I mean, from the entire process, I don't know it. Yeah, I joke and say I don't know if they just wanted me like to stop calling them. They said, give that girl her license. I don't know. Whatever it was, it worked.
Exactly. I mean, hey, they are a resource. It's their job to be supportive and helpful and be the
Absolutely.
hub of information.
Yeah.
So you should.
And honestly, I'm joking, but they were really so helpful. And I really think that they were happy to answer my questions because they rather me call and ask questions than to just go at this and make all these mistakes. So, yeah, I definitely recommend people utilize these departments.
Absolutely. And let's talk about getting paid. So, where does the money come from in this business? Is it Medicaid, state programs, foster agencies? Can you explain a little bit more about how that works?
So, this is another part that can be really confusing because the funding can come from multiple streams. It can come from different streams, because you can be licensed with multiple departments. I would say one of the most common, especially in what I do, is Medicaid waivers. So, the individuals we serve have a Medicaid waiver, and if you're certified, then you can, get paid to provide care for the population I serve or seniors. There's also state state funded programs. These are like Passport, which is another agency that typically serves elderly. And of course, there's the county foster care boards. I am also contracted with them, so you can care for teens, especially if they're aging out, foster care, and you can, get set up contracts through them. And of course, there's private pay. I mean, this is a big one. Private pay. There are families who have been planning for their elder, their old age, and they are willing and ready to pay. And so those are very common to start, and a lot of people just they don't know that you can definitely do that. But each program has its own billing system and approval process. And but once you're credentialed, you can create a very diversified income stream, and that's where the real stability starts to come in.
So for the different streams of income. And I know you previously did more childcare and you're going more so into elder care.
Yes,
So
yes.
are there like main differences between those two in terms of?
Yes, because and I didn't know when I was doing childcare that that really was considered a home care business as well, because I am taking care of children in my home, but my home is a daycare. But the difference is it's not 24-hour care, um, the way it is with the individuals I serve now. So now, we have the multiple locations, and you could definitely do that with childcare. It's not like people don't, especially if you decide to set up a center. I did not. Mine was home based. But yeah, I mean, I would say that's the major difference is I wasn't caring for children 24 hours a day, and they went home. And so when I am working with foster care children, you don't know how long of a time they'll be with you or how short of a time. I mean, I have had the county call me literally just to have a teenager sleep on my couch. I've had that, because it's like we don't know where they're going to put them in, and you don't want to have to put them like in jail. And when I say in jail, I mean like there are times if they literally have nowhere to go, they might have to sit in the lobby of your local, jail or something like that. That it happens. So I have had them call me and I say, I really don't have a bedroom open. I have an area that I can make it comfortable for them to sleep until we find someone. So I've had to do things like that, So that's kind of the difference when once you get into the contracting with youth is you don't know, or really anyone that we provide services with, you don't know how long they'll be there. And then I've had them call me and say, we only need you for a week, just a week. And then 2 years later, here they are. So, that it's a very volatile situation, once you get someone in your care. You don't know how long or how short. Everyone that I thought was going to be gone so quickly, they're still here years later.
And then with going into this new niche of elderly care, are you needing to go and get like completely different licenses, or do some of the licenses still apply, like state licenses apply, or?
So, yes, actually, I have a home care business license through the state that does allow me to provide non-medical services just in general. But if I want to get those waiver services through like the Department of Aging, then yeah, I need to apply through the Department of Aging, which I am actually in the process. It's been a much longer process than me like getting licensed through the Department of Developmental Disabilities. But I would say probably 80% of the way there. And it was also because I had to change some things, it was just little things that's really held that process up, because I probably would have, been finished with the process. But yeah.
So this might even apply to more current, but what's a licensing or a payment mistake that you made early on, or even now in this new era of being licensed, that taught you a big lesson?
So, oh my gosh. So when you go do your billing, and this is just so interesting to me because I remember back in the day, I don't know if you can remember a lot of times when they were coming up with those medical coding from home. Have you ever heard of any like where you can get a certified to do medical coding? And I used to think that was so cool. So now, it's what you got to do in order to get paid. You have to enter in the proper codes into the Medicaid billing system, and you have to enter in all their information. I mean, completely correct. And for each individual in order to get paid. If you do not do this, because they're always like 3 weeks out, you just cost yourself 3 weeks that you got to wait. So oh my goodness, some of my early mistakes. And I can just remember it was because I was probably stressed out, a little stressed. And I went to do my billing while I was not calm and cool. And I made a simple error, like the misspelling of a name or a digit off from entering the Medicaid number. And you thought you were going to get paid, and they're like, oh no, you made a mistake. So now you got to go back and bill again. And, that's a really costly mistake because, your staff, they need paid, week to week. And so it was tough and definitely, but it taught me, pay attention. When you go to do that billing, sit down, be calm, calm yourself, pay attention. And now I have people on the team that, they help me with this because now sometimes I don't even trust my eyes. I'm like, I need someone to, look over this because we can't afford these kind of mistakes. So that is probably earlier on because I did it multiple times, and that's the thing. And so I had to. So that lesson was, every time you sit down to try to do billing while you're stressed out or you have a lot on your mind, just wait until you can really take some deep breaths and focus.
Everything is super specific. I've had some experience working in healthcare with that, and I know it's super easy to make an error. And such a small error can have such a ripple effect of delays and issues. So I definitely think being calm is a. And I know that you did get licensed faster than most people. And I know that you're super ambitious, so I'm sure that that plays a role. But what beyond that made it possible for you to get licensed so fast? And what shortcuts or tips helped you beat that red tape?
So I would say the main thing is I was very persistent. And that's really how I attack most things is I'm very persistent with it. I treat it like it is a job, no matter what it is. But I think that is a mindset that has grown over the years with being an entrepreneur because you don't have working hours. And you have to learn the discipline to have to have hours that you focus on your business. So I learned that early on. And so that's definitely, what I'm going to do. I move with purpose. I always get some sort of mentorship for sure these days, because the earlier mistakes, I didn't get a mentor. I know better than that now. I called compliance daily. So I know now when I deal with any state department or I'm looking to get licensed when I just recently got my Ohio business license. Oh my goodness, the process took a very long time. It's not because of something I did. It's just they were behind. They didn't have very many staff in that department, and so they were understaffed, and so it made it take a lot longer. But I called all the time, and so these sort of things help you skip confusion. Getting mentorship, calling. Just go right to the horse's mouth. Just, get the answers right from the source. And these things make all the difference. And I feel like the faster you respond to these emails, when there's corrections, the faster you get through the system. And, just don't sit on that stuff. Act fast, act professionally. And it also builds trust with your reviewers. I feel like it makes the people that you're dealing with or working with feel like you're taking this seriously. So, that's how you should always act. You want to be taken seriously.
Absolutely. And you mentioned reviewers. So, what exactly is a reviewer's role? And is it a review process? Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Oh, yeah. So after you go through and you do all that tedious work of getting the things you need to put in that application where you're uploading your documents, your policies, it's honestly, I want to say about 20 items that you have to get. Some of these things they're not things you have. You have to go and, you may not have a workers' comp account yet. You got to go set that up. You may not have the insurance. So after you go through that full process and you finally go to submit your application, well, now you're waiting for a reviewer. And that could take days, it could take weeks. But once you are assigned a reviewer, that's really the great part because then now there's a line of communication between you and your reviewer. So you can actually go into your application and just communicate with the reviewer regularly. So I recently came up on my 3-year renewal and I had to renew, my state license. And I feel like they told me that they were understaffed, and so this may take a while. And it was sort of, it affected the business for a while because, we didn't know when we were going to get through this, when my license would be renewed and everything. But I communicated with that reviewer, like I'm telling you, I could tell if she answered like in the early morning, and I'd be like, oh, you know what I mean? And so it really helped me understand what was needed to get through the system, to get through the next process. And, long story short, I'm done. We're, we're good to go. We're certified. And so we got through the renewal process. And so now, I don't have to worry about it for another 3 years. But, that's what I would say. So you go through first you're just waiting for a reviewer, then you get a reviewer. And once you get past that first review, then it goes through a second review. And once you get through the second review, then you're done with that state department. Now you're waiting. It's going to go into pending Medicaid review. So now you got to wait for Medicaid to show up. Usually when you very first, are getting started, they're going to come to the office because they want to see the physical location. They want to see, that you have everything set in place. And once you get through that, I mean, you're licensed, you're ready to go. Now, I know I made it sound really easy.
It doesn't.
It's easy.
It doesn't sound easy.
It's not easy if you don't have someone to help you through this process. I mean, if you don't know anyone, yeah, it's not. Now we can get through it now like that.
It's a lot of moving parts.
It's a lot of moving parts. But like I said, if you have a network or you got somebody in your corner, it's quick. It goes just like that.
And for someone who is trying to navigate this and working through the process with reviewers, do the reviewers provide any kind of like guidelines or checklists, or do they have anything that helps structure this out, or is everything something you independently have to seek out?
Oh, I mean, your reviewer is generally pretty helpful. So if they didn't accept something you sent in, they're going to tell you why. I mean, you know what I mean? So yeah, once you get through the review process, if there's something that you sent in that they're, just don't isn't going to pass, they're going to let you know. They're going to let you know what you need to do, where you need to go to get it. Yeah, they're very helpful. I mean, yeah, once you get to that point, they're going to definitely clarify what they need from you in order for you to get, on to the next level.
Awesome. And then the renewals. So these renewals are every 3 years. It's not annual. It's
Yes.
every 3 years.
No, but you do have an annual sometimes, like an annual, I would say like an audit. It's like it's not as in depth as the starting process, your initial review, but they do want to see, what you've been working on, and they're going to do like an annual thing, and they don't do it every year. I haven't gotten one every year. I feel like I get one every other year, maybe.
Okay. And then in terms of the renewal, is it everything you originally went through that's being renewed, or is it certain parts or in certain things within your licensing?
I would say pretty much, yeah. I mean, yeah, I had to do everything, but the thing is, you have it. I mean, it's not hard. Like most of it's probably saved right on your laptop. It's probably, or even in your phone, you know. So that wasn't an issue for me at all. And I know people going through the renewal process right now. I have some friends going through it right now, and they're maneuvering through it. I mean, after you've been doing this for so long, you generally have what you need. It's just that initial.
Right. That first hump to get over.
Yes, that's it. After a while, yeah, you learn to maneuver it. You have everything you need.
And with all these moving parts and all these, like you said, tedious tasks, I know people might hear that and think, "Oh, I'm not ready," or "I don't have enough funding," or "I don't have this," or "I don't have that." So I know that so many people wait until they feel ready. But what's your advice to someone who's stuck in, let's say, like perfection mode and they're kind of afraid to start applying?
Oh my goodness, this is something that I struggle with in my earlier years for so long. Like waiting to feel ready. Oh my goodness, you are never going to feel ready to do something. Most people don't. And I think that's readiness is a myth, that we say to ourselves, that we tell ourselves, that you need to wait till you're ready, just so you can stay in your comfort zone. Progress doesn't come with plans. It just comes with that imperfection of action. Those imperfect actions are really what gets you prepared. So I say start scared, start unsure, because I certainly did. But you just really need to start. Because when you're sitting there and you just are letting all these, big thoughts get into your mind of what could happen if you start, you just start to panic. But there is something very powerful about just starting. I don't care if the starting is the application, opening the start somewhere. And as you keep on moving, your nerves calm and you see that there was really nothing to be afraid of in the first place. So, you fix and polish things along the way, but you have to start. You can't grow a business that you're too afraid to even start. That's just not how this works.
I like what you said, start scared. I think that that's such a like quotable action item. Start scared. If you're gonna start, you're gonna be scared whether you start or not. So you might as well just start scared. Go for it.
Let's keep this. I'm scared. Absolutely.
And I know that you've had obviously your own experience with starting your own business, but you've also had so many mentees at this point along the way. So I know you mentioned at one point or indicated that you had this one specific mentee that you helped get approved really quickly. So I think you helped them get insured and like fully approved in 10 minutes or something like that. Can you
Oh,
tell
yeah,
me a
yeah,
little bit
yeah.
more in depth about
Yes.
that?
Yes. So this is a story that I really love. One of my mentees was just ready to, give up because, they thought that getting insured was just going to take so long. They, literally, they had done everything, and this last little hump they needed to get over was, getting insured. And, I said, well, let's hop on Zoom, and I walked them through the process. We went to the insurance website, and, I helped them maneuver through the answers. And they were insured in 10 minutes. We had a policy in hand and they submitted their they submitted their insurance documents right there. And now the rest is history. But that is, again, the power of guidance, having someone who's been there. So, I don't even, as a politician right now, me being a councilwoman, and I'm very new to, this field, this area. I have a couple mentors. I really do, that I can call to say, I have no idea. What does this mean? Because we have I was just telling someone this, we have our weekly council meetings, and initially you look over the agenda, and when I first started, it looked like just gibberish. But I got a mentor. I got people help me understand how, the processes of it. And now it's like, oh my goodness, what was I ever even scared of? So yeah, so what could take someone weeks to do on your own, a mentor can help you do something in minutes, and that's the power of mentorship. And now I know better. I get a mentor for everything. I'm an entrepreneur. I said this before, so I even have e-commerce stores. I have a mentor for that. I work with people who have scaled their e-commerce stores. You know what I mean? Because I just don't see the point of going at something anymore when you can get help. Why
Absolutely.
do this when you can get help?
Especially, I feel like in the world that we live in now, there are so many resources, and with social media and with events and all of these different things, there's so many resources available. There's so many ways to connect with people. But being that you've had so many mentors, even going back to this e-commerce store, which I didn't even know about. You're full of surprises
Oh
all
yeah,
the
yeah.
time. But
Yeah.
where like how do you connect with these mentors? Like, is it in person? How do you find these mentors?
So I love Fiverr. I will find somebody on Fiverr in a heartbeat. I will find someone by just searching the web, and I just end up finding people. I had a speaking coach recently who was from Serbia. We would hop on Zoom, and oh my goodness, He was amazing. He was 19, and I was like, well, you could be my son. Like, you are younger than my daughter. You know what I mean? And so he was so good at what he does, and I found him on Fiverr. If you see how many jobs I have hired people for on Fiverr, it's just amazing. Any number of things from web design to, and I have people help me through things. If I want to learn something, I can go on Upwork, Fiverr. I find people on TikTok. I find people on Facebook. Because there's plenty of people out there, just like me, willing to teach you the skills that they know. So I take advantage of that, and I urge other people to do the same because it has helped really grow my business, grow me personally. You know what I mean? And it's been the greatest educational tool, just leveraging someone else's talents. It really has. Dealing that, it's like a currency to me. Someone else's knowledge is like currency, in my opinion, because what they know and is just secondhand nature to them. And it goes back to, like, I think when in our first episode, or something just seems like a mountain to you, but to them it's like, oh my gosh, I do this in my sleep. And I'm like, oh my goodness, please help me. Then I have no problem asking for help these days. And even to take that a little further, just as I become a very busy businesswoman now, aside from having children and being a mother and a wife, there are other things that I delegate. There are jobs I delegate all the time now. That before, you could never get me to maybe hire someone to clean my house. Yeah, no, I don't have that problem no more. Yeah, no, because I got so many other things to do. Now, am I saying I just don't clean? No, I'm not saying that, but certainly I get help in whatever area I need it. And I learned that from Rachel Rogers. I don't know if you've ever heard of Rachel Rogers.
No, but I'm gonna look her up right after.
Yes, look up Rachel. Oh my goodness, I love her. Her book is called We Should All Be Millionaires.
Okay. What kind of work is she in? Is it more like entrepreneurship?
So now, yes, but she was originally an attorney out of New York. Oh my God, her story is amazing. It's just amazing. But now she owns the island and she's a billionaire now. And so she's a mentor. So she is my goal, to have her be my mentor. Not even gonna be very honest with you. It's she's definitely worth the money, but I'm gonna have to probably save up to get there, but that is who I ultimately would love to have as a mentor.
That's awesome. And it's amazing that you seek out these people that have aspirations or have accomplished things that you're also seeking. Like, even if it was Rachel Rogers, who's probably very well known and famous, or if it's someone that's on Fiverr, you still can figure out a mentor within your comfort zone or your price range or your experience, to find someone that can just give you any kind of valuable insight to where you're at in life.
Well, because now that I know that that's possible, I mean, you can find someone or something that you need at whatever level that you're at. You really can. You know what I mean? I remember when I was doing childcare, and obviously, so I take care of kids for a living, and the house could get pretty out of hand. Laundry could get, you know what I mean? And I remember trying to keep up with it as long as I could, and I was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And I found a housekeeper at that time that was at my level, that I could, you know what I mean? At that time, I could afford. So, maybe I can't afford a $500 a day housekeeper, and I couldn't at that time. And I'm not saying I can now, because that's still pretty out there. But just saying, I found someone who was within, what I was able to do within my budget, and they did a great job of helping me, and I'm very grateful, to that. But even someone like Rachel, I learned about Rachel because I read her book. I got the Audible. I would listen to it while doing my makeup in the morning, getting ready, and then I was like, oh my goodness, I am amazed with this woman's story. And so I reached out to her. I found her, and I reached out to her directly, And before you know it, she was having an upcoming like challenge. So I got in her challenge. So I got to, I got to get in the challenge. I got to get an actual mentorship call with her, but yeah, I would love to have her as my mentor, like here on out. That's my goal. I would love that.
I'm definitely going to look into her immediately after
Yes,
this.
yes.
But in talking about who your mentors are and you seeking out all this mentorship has led you to become such a great mentor. And I'm sure that you have a lot of like
Yeah.
mentee stories that come to mind and things like that. But is there something consistent between all of them in which you motivate them? Like, is there something, or how so do you
Yeah,
motivate them?
I would say, if I'm being honest, I am probably still at the stage where a lot of my mentees I see myself in, and it really helps my drive to really want to see them do well. Someone who may be a single mom, or someone who's an underdog, someone who's just really, you've really been trying, and it's just that the things just are not working out. When I see that, it really gives me the drive to say it becomes a mission. I was like, oh, I am dragging you to the top. Just don't even worry about it. And I do. I really get really charged up when I get those kind of individuals that reach out to me and I hear their story and I'm like, oh my goodness, we are going to get you so there so fast. And I do. I love that. Those are the challenges I love.
Absolutely. I feel like every time we talk and we connect, I feel motivated to like go out and try something different. So thank you for being you and for being so motivating and so insightful and just have like this genuine energy of encouragement. So it's so nice to
Thank
be able to
you.
connect with you. I hope our listeners can feel that just by listening. I know if you're watching
Oh,
the
I
live
hope
video or the
so.
video rather, you definitely
Yes.
can because I know I can feel it through the screen. So I hope everyone else can too.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to next week's session. And, I'm starting to look forward to doing my podcast every week. And I'm starting to, you know, talk about it to more people. And I'm really becoming very proud of it pretty quickly. And I don't know how we get it to number one, but we're going to do that. I don't know what that looks like in podcast world, how it gets to the top of the charts, but like we're going to get it there.
Absolutely. You see, this is another example of you trying something new and starting scared. You started scared. And
Yes,
now in
absolutely, Elvis,
three
absolutely.
episodes,
Yes, and I meant to say that while we were talking about that I mean, I was not ready. There's no way that I felt that I was ready. Like if you would have probably asked me a year ago, I would have said, "Wait, let me get my doctorate first. Let me get my PhD and then I'll do a podcast." That's when I'll be ready. But then I'm learning that there are people with PhDs and master's degrees and you know what I mean? And they've been going to school for so long and they are very versed and educated in what they do and they're still scared. So, yeah, you'll never be ready if you just let yourself, take the wheel. You just have to do it.
absolutely. Perfect example of starting scared and three episodes in, you're ready to share and already feeling proud of it. So I love that. I think that's so spot on to everything we were talking about today. So thank you again. Thank you to all the listeners for listening into Care to CEO, and I will talk to you next week.
Thank you.